Lonely rancher bought a wife, but her one condition changes his life forever. Wild West Tales. In the wide and quiet lands of Red Valley, where the sun rose slow and the wind moved gently across dry fields, lived a man named Caleb Hart. He was a rancher, and he owned a large piece of land that stretched farther than most people could walk in a day. From far away, his life might have looked strong and successful. But inside, Caleb lived with a deep silence that never seemed to leave him. Caleb was a man of routine. Every morning he woke up before sunrise. He would step outside his wooden ranch house, take a slow look at the empty horizon, and begin his work. He checked the fences, fed the cattle, and repaired anything that needed fixing. The ranch depended on him, and he depended on the ranch. It was his whole world. But even though he stayed busy, something was missing. There were no voices calling his name except the wind. No laughter in the house at night. No footsteps beside his own. The large ranch house, once full of life during his childhood, now felt empty and still. The rooms echoed with silence, and the wooden floors creaked like they were reminding him how alone he was. Years passed like this. Caleb grew older, stronger, and more quiet. He became known in nearby towns as a hard-working man who rarely smiled but never failed in his duties. People respected him, but few truly knew him. Sometimes, when the sun set over Red Valley and the sky turned orange and purple, Caleb would sit outside and watch the distance. He would wonder what it would be like to share his life with someone. Not for help with work, but for simple company. Someone to talk to after a long day, someone to share meals with, someone who would make the house feel like a home again. But Caleb was not a man who easily asked for help. He had learned to depend only on himself. Still, loneliness has a way of slowly changing even the strongest hearts. One evening, after a long day of repairing a broken fence near the south field, Caleb received a letter from a distant town. It was unusual for him to receive personal letters, so he opened it carefully. The letter spoke about a marriage arrangement, a traditional agreement where two people could come together to build a shared life. The idea was simple. A woman from another place, someone looking for a new beginning, would agree to marry a rancher like him. In return, she would have safety, a home, and stability. Caleb read the letter many times. At first he felt unsure. He was not used to such ideas. His life was simple, and the thought of bringing someone new into it felt strange. But the silence in his home felt heavier that night. The wind outside sounded louder than usual. Even the ticking clock on the wall seemed to remind him of how empty his days had become. After days of thinking, Caleb made a quiet decision. He sent a reply. He did not know who would come, or when, or what kind of person she would be. He only knew one thing. His life could not continue the same way forever. Weeks passed. The ranch stayed the same, but Caleb's thoughts did not. He found himself cleaning the house more carefully than before. He fixed small things he had ignored for years. He even placed an old chair near the fireplace that he had never used. It was as if he was preparing for something he did not fully understand yet. Then one morning, a wagon appeared on the distant road leading to his ranch. Dust rose behind its wheels as it moved slowly closer. Caleb stood outside, watching quietly. His heart felt different, not racing but aware, like something important was about to begin. As the wagon came nearer, he could see a woman sitting inside. She was calm, sitting straight, holding a small suitcase in her hands. The driver stopped near the fence. Caleb did not move right away. He simply stood there, looking at the moment he had chosen, now becoming real. The wagon door opened slowly, and in that quiet Red Valley morning, everything in Caleb Hart's life was about to change. The morning sun rose slowly over Red Valley, spreading soft, golden light across the dry land. The air was calm, but something about that day felt different. Caleb Hart stood near the wooden fence of his ranch, watching the wagon that had stopped in front of his home. Dust still floated in the air, settling slowly on the ground like the end of a long journey. The wagon driver stepped down first, adjusted his hat, and then opened the door. That was when Caleb saw her clearly for the first time. Her name was Eleanor Wade. She stepped out with steady movement, holding a small suitcase in one hand. She was not dressed like someone who was weak or lost. Instead, she carried herself with quiet confidence. Her clothes were simple but neat. Her eyes were calm but sharp, as if she noticed everything around her without saying a word. Caleb did not speak at first. He was used to silence, but this silence felt different. It was not empty. It was full of questions. Eleanor looked at the ranch house, then at the open fields, and finally at Caleb. She did not smile, but she did not look afraid either. She seemed to be understanding the place, not judging it. The driver cleared his throat and said a few words about the long journey. Caleb nodded once, then paid him and watched as the wagon slowly left, leaving dust trails behind. Now only two people stood in the wide open land. Caleb finally spoke in a low voice. "You must be Eleanor." She gave a small nod. "Yes, I am." Her voice was calm, steady, and sure. For a moment, neither of them said anything. The wind moved softly between them, carrying the sound of distant birds and dry grass. Caleb finally turned and said, "You can come inside." Eleanor followed him without hesitation. Inside the ranch house, everything was simple. Wooden walls, old furniture, and a fireplace that had not been used for a long time. Eleanor placed her suitcase carefully near a chair and looked around. She did not show disappointment or surprise. She simply observed. Caleb felt slightly uncomfortable, though he did not show it. He was not used to having someone else in his space. The house suddenly felt smaller, as if it was aware of a new presence. He offered her water. She accepted it politely. After a few minutes of silence, Caleb finally spoke again. "You know why you are here." Eleanor looked at him directly. "Yes." Her answer was simple, but it carried weight. There was no confusion in her voice, no hesitation. Caleb studied her carefully. He had expected someone unsure, maybe even nervous. But Eleanor was different. She seemed prepared for something. "You can stay here," Caleb said slowly. "But this is not an easy place. The work is hard. The land is rough. Life here is not comfortable." Eleanor listened without interrupting. When he finished, she nodded once. "I did not come for comfort," she said. Those words stayed in the air longer than expected. Caleb did not know what to say next. Later that day, he showed her around the ranch. He pointed to the barn, the cattle fields, the water well, and the storage shed. Eleanor walked beside him, observing everything carefully. She asked a few simple questions, but mostly she listened. Caleb noticed something unusual. She was not just looking at the place. She was understanding it. When they returned to the house, the sun was already lowering in the sky. Long shadows stretched across the ground. The day was ending, but something new had begun. That evening, they ate a simple meal together. The silence between them was not uncomfortable, but it was still unfamiliar. Caleb found himself thinking more than speaking. Eleanor, on the other hand, seemed comfortable with quiet moments. After dinner, she finally spoke again. "There is something you should know," she said. Caleb looked at her. "What is it?" Eleanor held her cup carefully, then spoke in a calm voice. "I agreed to this arrangement under one condition." Caleb paused. He had read the letter before, but no condition had been mentioned clearly. He asked, "What condition?" Eleanor looked at him directly. Her expression did not change. "I will not live here as someone below you," she said. "If I stay, I will be treated as an equal. Not just in name, but in decisions, in work, and in life here." The room became quiet again. Caleb did not answer immediately. He was used to being in control of his land and his choices. The idea of sharing decisions was not familiar to him, but Eleanor did not push him. She simply waited. Outside, the wind moved across the ranch, brushing against the windows like a soft reminder that time does not stop for hesitation. Caleb finally spoke, slowly. "That is your condition?" "Yes," she replied. He looked at her for a long moment. Something about her words felt firm but not demanding. It was not a fight, it was a boundary. And in that quiet evening, Caleb Hart realized that Eleanor Wade was not just someone who had arrived at his ranch. She was someone who would change the way he understood it. The next morning in Red Valley began like any other day, but for Caleb Hart, nothing felt normal anymore. The air was still fresh and quiet, yet his thoughts were full of Eleanor Wade's words from the night before. Her condition had stayed in his mind like a strong echo that would not fade. Inside the ranch house, Eleanor was already awake. She stood near the window, looking out at the open fields. The soft morning light touched her face, but her expression remained calm and thoughtful. She was not a woman who wasted time. Even on her first full day at the ranch, she seemed to be studying everything: how the wind moved, how the land looked, how the ranch functioned. Caleb entered the room quietly. He noticed that she had already made her bed neatly. Small details like this surprised him. Most people who arrived at the ranch took time to adjust, but Eleanor seemed to adjust immediately. "Good morning," Caleb said. "Good morning," she replied without turning away from the window. There was a short silence between them. Caleb was still thinking about what she had said the night before. Finally, he decided to speak. "I thought about what you said," he began slowly. Eleanor turned to face him. She did not interrupt. She simply listened. Caleb continued, "About your condition." She nodded slightly, waiting. He took a breath. "You want to be treated as an equal, in work, in decisions, in everything here." "Yes," she said calmly. "That is what I meant." Caleb crossed his arms, looking uncertain. He had always managed the ranch alone. Every decision, every problem, every success, it had all been his responsibility. The idea of sharing that control was not easy for him to accept. "This ranch, it has been mine for a long time," he said carefully. "I understand," Eleanor replied. Her voice was steady. "But I am not asking to take it from you. I am asking to build it with you." Her words were simple, but they carried meaning. Caleb looked at her for a moment, trying to understand her completely. Later that day, Eleanor began to show what she meant by equality in action. She did not wait to be told what to do. Instead, she observed the ranch closely. She walked through the barn, checked the water supply, and studied the condition of the fences. Caleb followed her at a distance, unsure at first. He was not used to someone else moving freely through his work without direction. But Eleanor was careful. She did not interfere. She simply understood. At one point, she stopped near the water trough and said, "This needs repair soon. If it breaks, the cattle will struggle." Caleb looked at it and nodded. He had noticed it before, but had delayed fixing it due to other tasks. "How did you see that so quickly?" he asked. Eleanor replied, "Because I am looking at the ranch as a whole, not just parts of it." That answer stayed with him. As the day continued, she suggested small improvements: better storage for feed, a more organized schedule for cattle care, and simple ways to reduce wasted time. Caleb listened quietly. He did not agree or disagree immediately, but he noticed something important. Her ideas were practical. They were not about changing everything, but about improving what already existed. By afternoon, they worked together on fixing a section of broken fencing. At first, there was distance between them. Caleb did the physical work while Eleanor observed and guided, but slowly that distance began to shrink. "Hold it steady there," she said once. Caleb followed her instruction without thinking much about it. After a few minutes, he realized something unusual. He was not resisting her guidance. He was accepting it. When they finished, they stood side by side, looking at the repaired fence. "It looks better now," Eleanor said. Caleb nodded. "Yes, it does." That simple agreement felt different. It was not just about the fence. It was about working together. As the sun began to set, the ranch grew quiet again. The sky turned shades of orange and soft pink. Caleb and Eleanor walked back toward the house slowly. That was when Eleanor finally spoke again about her condition, but this time in more detail. "I did not come here to depend on someone," she said. "I came here to build something that belongs to both of us. If I am to stay, I will not be a guest, and I will not be a servant. I will be a partner." Caleb listened carefully. This time, he did not interrupt. She continued, "I have worked hard in my life before I came here. I know how to manage, how to plan, and how to survive. I will use those skills here." Caleb looked ahead at the land as they walked. For the first time, he saw the ranch not just as something he owned, but as something that could grow. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "I have never worked with someone like this before," he admitted. Eleanor gave a slight nod. "Then maybe it is time to try something new." They reached the house, and the evening wind moved gently around them. Something had changed that day, not in the land, but in the way two people began to understand each other. And without either of them fully realizing it, the ranch was no longer just a place of solitude. It was slowly becoming a place of partnership. The days that followed brought a quiet but steady change to Red Valley Ranch. The land itself looked the same, dry fields stretching far into the distance, wooden fences standing under the sun, and cattle moving slowly across the open ground. But the life inside the ranch was no longer the same. Caleb Hart and Eleanor Wade had begun working together in a way that neither of them had fully expected. At first, it was not easy. Caleb was used to doing things his own way, without questions or suggestions. Eleanor, on the other hand, believed in planning, structure, and shared decisions. Their styles were different, and sometimes that caused small moments of silence between them. But slowly, something changed. Caleb started to notice that Eleanor's ideas were not just different, they were useful. She saw problems before they became serious. She noticed small details that he often ignored because of habit. And most importantly, she never tried to take control. She simply wanted to share responsibility. Eleanor also began to understand Caleb better. She saw that his quiet nature was not coldness, but a habit built from years of living alone. He was careful with trust, not because he was unfriendly, but because he had learned to depend only on himself. One morning, they stood together near the cattle field. The sun was warm, and the wind moved gently across the grass. Eleanor said, "If we divide the work better, the ranch will run more smoothly." Caleb looked at her and asked, "How?" She explained calmly, "You focus on the land and animals you know best. I will manage planning, supplies, and improvements. We both check decisions before they are final." Caleb thought for a moment. In the past, he would have rejected such an idea without hesitation. But now, he did not. After a short silence, he nodded. "We can try it." That simple agreement marked a new step in their journey. As weeks passed, the ranch began to feel different. Work became more organized. Repairs were done faster. Supplies were managed more carefully. Even the cattle seemed healthier because of better attention. But more than the improvements in work, something else was growing quietly between Caleb and Eleanor. Respect. It did not come suddenly. It grew slowly through small moments, shared meals, quiet conversations, and long hours of working side by side. Sometimes they disagreed, but they always listened to each other, and that made a difference. One evening, after a long day of work, they sat outside the ranch house. The sky was clear, filled with stars. The wind was soft, and the land was quiet. Caleb looked at the horizon and said, "I never thought this place could feel different." Eleanor turned slightly. "It didn't change," she said. "We changed how we see it." Caleb thought about her words. She was right. The land was the same, but his life was not. He asked quietly, "Do you ever regret coming here?" Eleanor did not answer immediately. She looked at the stars for a moment before speaking. "No," she said. "I came here because I wanted a new beginning. I didn't know what it would become, but I knew I couldn't stay in the same place I was before." Caleb nodded slowly. For the first time, he felt that he understood her journey a little more. Another week passed, and the ranch faced its first real challenge since Eleanor's arrival. A strong storm was predicted to hit the valley. In the past, Caleb would have handled everything alone, preparing as much as he could by himself. But this time was different. Eleanor suggested a plan. "We should secure the barns early," she said. "Move the tools inside, reinforce the weak fences, and bring the cattle closer to safe ground." Caleb agreed. This time, there was no hesitation. They worked together from early morning until late evening. The wind grew stronger as they prepared. There was no unnecessary talk, only focused work. Caleb realized how efficient things became when two people worked with a shared plan. When the storm finally arrived that night, they stood inside the ranch house, listening to the wind outside. The house shook slightly, but everything they had prepared held strong. Eleanor looked at Caleb and said, "It worked." Caleb gave a small smile. "Yes, it did." It was a simple moment, but it meant something important. Trust was no longer just an idea between them. It was becoming real. After the storm passed, the morning revealed a fresh, quiet world. The air was clean, and the land looked washed and calm. Some small damage had occurred, but most of the ranch had survived well because of their preparation. Caleb walked outside and saw Eleanor already checking the fences. She was careful, focused, and calm as always. He walked up to her and said, "We did well." She looked at him and replied, We did it together. Those words stayed with Caleb longer than he expected. In that moment, he realized something important. Eleanor was no longer just a guest or part of an agreement. She had become part of the ranch itself and part of his life. And as the sun rose over Red Valley once again, Caleb Hart understood that his life had not only changed because of a condition, it had changed because of a partnership that grew stronger with every passing day.